My name is Mira Calder, 31 years old. Pilots ask each other about the most terrifying mid-flight situation passengers never knew was happening, but I wasn't a pilot. I was a flight attendant for 6 years, and I quit last month. This is the story I can't shake, the one that still lives under my skin like a splinter I can't tweeze out. It started as a routine red-eye from Seattle to Miami. We had 187 passengers, a cabin full of business travelers with laptop bags and families carrying the promise of Disney in their shoulders. I was assigned to first class with Dex, my coworker who'd been flying for 23 years. He had the sort of calm that made turbulence feel like someone rocking you to sleep. I'd seen him steady drunks, soothe exhausted infants, and talk a panicked man away from clawing at the exit door. Nothing rattled him until that night. 2 hours in, somewhere over Nebraska, the interphone chime cut through the soft murmur of the cabin. "Cockpit," Captain Rodriguez said. His voice was calm, but there was a thread in it, like a high note vibrating under the melody. When we entered, both pilots were fixed on the instrument panel like it had betrayed them personally. "We have a situation," Rodriguez said quietly. "I need you to stay calm and listen." The backup hydraulic system had failed, then the primary, both gone within minutes. That doesn't happen. Hydraulics are the muscles of an airplane. Landing gear, flaps, brakes, steering, everything that lets a heavy body act light. Without them, you're a 200-ton glider praying the ground is gentle. "We're trying to manually extend the landing gear now," the co-pilot said, never looking up. "Even if we get it down, we may not have brakes or steering." I felt the subtle shift in the air. Pilots speak softly when they don't want the room to hear their fear. Rodriguez laid out the plan in a voice smooth as poured concrete. "Divert to Denver, emergency equipment standing by, land hot, hope friction does what hydraulics can't, and keep the cabin calm at all costs." "What do we tell passengers?" I asked, my tongue thick. "Nothing that makes them panic," he said, finally meeting my eyes. "If there's a rush to the back, we lose what little control we have. Make up what you have to, keep them seated, keep them breathing." For the next 40 minutes, I did the smallest things like they mattered, the way you do when you know the floor might vanish. I poured ginger ale with hands that shook and pretended they didn't. I smiled at a little girl who asked for apple juice and tucked her blanket under her feet so her toes wouldn't get cold if we skidded. I leaned close to an elderly man to buckle his belt, and his cologne, old cedar and clean soap, stuck to my throat. A dad made a joke about airplane food. I laughed like laughter could fasten bolts back into place. Dex kept moving, face pale ash under the cabin lights. If Dex looked scared, we were in trouble. Rodriguez's voice floated out over the intercom like butter and denial. "Folks, we're experiencing a minor technical issue, so we'll be making an unscheduled landing in Denver. Nothing to worry about." Minor. The word hung in the aisle like a prop we all agreed to believe in. I started the safety demonstration and watched two men in suits roll their eyes, annoyed they had to put down their spreadsheets. If only they knew. As we descended, I could see the runway through the window slats, foamed white like a winter road. Fire trucks lined up like toy soldiers, their lights pulsing red, blue, red. I strapped into my jump seat and felt the buckle bite. The air pressure changed. Ears popped. Metal sang. The first touchdown was too hard. We bounced. The second slam ripped a scream from the cabin. One voice, then many, a wave breaking on tile. We were not slowing. The speed tape in my brain read terror. Rodriguez threw the engines into reverse. We yawed hard and carved into the grass median. The plane shuddered like a living thing in pain. Luggage rained from overhead like fruit shaken loose by a storm. A woman sobbed, a sound I will never not hear. Metal scraped earth. Sparks tasted like pennies at the back of my tongue. Then, sudden stillness. 3 seconds. No one moved in those 3 seconds. We were suspended between what almost happened and what didn't. Then Rodriguez's voice cracked open the silence. "Everybody out, now." We evacuated in 90 seconds. All 187 walked away onto grass and foam and the oily chemical scent of not dying. The plane sat there, smoking, a creature we had escaped from. Later, on the tarmac, I heard a passenger on her phone. Yeah, emergency landing. So annoying. I'm missing my connection. She had no idea. None of them did. We were minutes from catastrophe. Airplanes are miracles until they are math, and math is merciless. I quit 2 weeks later, not because of the fear, but because of what came after. The investigation found something that chilled me more than the landing. The failure wasn't mechanical. Someone had tampered with the hydraulics on the ground in Seattle before we took off. They pulled the maintenance bay footage and found 47 minutes of deleted tape, cleanly excised, not a glitch. Someone with access, someone who knew exactly where the cameras looked. The FBI interviewed everyone. They didn't find who did it. But there were things the public didn't hear. 3 weeks before our flight, another plane had a hydraulic incident. 2 weeks after ours, a third. All red eyes, all departing from Seattle, all missing camera footage. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a pattern with teeth. Rodriguez called me last week. I didn't recognize his number, but the voice took me right back to the cockpit. I've been digging, he said. There's something in the logs, a pattern. I think I know who, but I need your help to prove it. He named a diner in Tacoma, halfway between Seattle and Olympia, and suggested Sunday at 10 a.m. His tone was calm, quieter than I remembered. It sounded like someone who'd been sleeping with one eye open. That night I didn't sleep. Close your eyes and your body plays the landing back in hi-fi. The foam runway, the metal scream, the moment the nose felt weightless, the world tilting. Every time I checked my apartment door, the deadbolt clicked like a metronome for panic. 2, 3, 4 times. I sat on the floor with my back pressed to the wood as if my weight mattered. On Thursday, my sister Becca called. She's a data analyst in Portland, the kind of person who can find a melody buried in static. You sound like garbage, she said. What's going on? I told her everything, words spilling out in a single rope. The landing, the investigation, the missing footage, Rodriguez's call, the way my hands remembered the weight of someone else's fear. She went quiet long enough to make me think the call had dropped. Meet him, she said finally. Somewhere public. Record everything. I'm coming with you. You don't have to, I started. I do, she said. Someone tried to kill you and 186 other people. If there's a pattern, we document it properly. That's literally my job. I heard her keys in the background, the small professional clatter of a life that still made sense. I drove to my aunt's place in Olympia to get out of my empty apartment. Becca arrived Saturday night with a laptop, 2 notebooks, and 3 pens, like she was packing for a siege. If we're doing this, we're doing it right, she said, sliding into a chair at the kitchen table. Start at the beginning. We stayed up until 2 a.m., walking minute by minute through the flight. She color-coded my terror, blue for conversations, green for mechanical observations, red for anything that smelled like intent. The deleted footage bothers me, she said, tapping her pen against the margin. That's planning, access, and confidence. Cameras don't just fail for 47 minutes. Before bed, I stood at the window. Across the street, an old maintenance door on the neighbor's garage stuck halfway before it rolled up with a groan. The sound snagged on my spine. Funny what you notice when you're listening for breakage. Sunday morning came too fast. The diner in Tacoma was laid out like a memory. Vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like it remembered being beans. Rodriguez was already there in a back booth, his seat chosen so his eyes could watch the room. He looked older, grayer, like sleep had become a rumor. Thanks for coming, he said, standing, giving Becca a small, respectful nod. He slid a manila folder across the table, the paper inside fluffed and dog-eared, highlighted in blocks of yellow and pink, like someone trying to trap a ghost in ink. We're going to record, Becca said, setting her phone between the salt and the sugar. Rodriguez's eyes flicked to the door, then back to the phone. The waitress poured coffee and didn't ask questions. Becca opened the voice memo app. Her thumb hovered over the red circle. We looked at one another, all 3 of us, as if pressing that button would be the point of no return. My heartbeat ticked in my ears, steady as an engine at idle, waiting for thrust. We pressed record. The recording light blinked red on Becca's phone as Rodriguez leaned forward, his hands clasped around a mug that had long gone cold. I've been obsessed with this, he said quietly. Couldn't let it go. His voice wasn't the confident tone I'd heard that night in the cockpit, It was thinner now, the sound of a man who'd been awake too many nights in a row. He spread a stack of maintenance logs, flight schedules, and handwritten notes across the table. These are from the last 6 months, he explained. 3 confirmed incidents, all red eyes, all departing from Seattle, all missing security footage, hydraulic failure in each one. Becca's eyes sharpened. You cross-referenced the maintenance crews? Rodriguez nodded. Every log lists the same lead mechanic. He pulled out one paper and slid it to us. His name's Vincent Cho, 11 years with the airline, clean record, not so much as a late clock-in. I frowned, so he's careful. He's careful, Rodriguez agreed, but maybe too careful. Look here. He pointed to a line of maintenance notes from one of the flights. Hydraulic seal replaced 2 days before the failure. Brand new part. Yet that's where the pressure dropped. Becca leaned closer, her pen scratching across her notebook. And the footage? Deleted, he said flatly. 32 minutes gone. No trace. It called it a glitch, but glitches don't follow patterns. The waitress came by to refill our coffee, and for a moment, the ordinary smell of pancakes and syrup clashed violently with the horror we were discussing. When she left, Rodriguez slid a photo from his folder. This is the hydraulic line from the Boston flight, he said. See that mark? A faint scratch ran along the tubing. That's deliberate, he said. A scored line, just deep enough to fail under pressure at altitude. You'd have to know exactly what you're doing. Becca exhaled slowly. So, we've got a mechanic with motive, means, and opportunity. That's the part that doesn't fit, Rodriguez said. He has no motive, no disciplinary issues, no grudges, no money problems. He's married, 2 kids, coaches Little League. He's the last person you'd suspect. Becca's fingers flew over her laptop keyboard. What about his work history? Rodriguez hesitated, then pulled another page. 10 years ago, he worked for another airline. There was a crash in 2015. Maintenance error contributed. 43 dead. Vincent was part of that crew. Never charged, but he was fired. It took him 2 years to get hired again. So, I said, revenge? Maybe, Rodriguez said. Or obsession. Maybe he's trying to prove something, to show the system's broken. Becca looked up from her screen. Or maybe he's been covering something for someone else. Patterns like this, 3 identical failures, feel like collaboration. We sat in silence, the hum of the diner mixing with the low hiss of the coffee pot. Outside, the rain streaked the window in crooked lines. For a moment, I watched a mechanic walk past the gas station across the street in a reflective jacket, and my stomach turned. I couldn't stop imagining his face as Vincent's. Why tell me all this? I asked finally. Rodriguez's eyes found mine. Because you were there. You saw what happened. I can't go to the media alone. They'd call me paranoid. But if someone who lived through it speaks out, they'll listen. You want me to go public? I want justice, he said. I want accountability. Becca closed her laptop. Before we even think about that, we verify everything. We'll pull records, maintenance schedules, crew rosters. If your pattern's real, we'll find more links. Rodriguez handed us copies of the files. I've included timestamps, security IDs, everything I could get. Be careful with them. I shouldn't even have these. The ride back to my aunt's was quiet. Becca stared out the window, tapping her pen against her thigh, thinking. I could tell she was already building the structure in her mind. When we got home, she cleared the kitchen table, spread the documents out like puzzle pieces, and opened a new spreadsheet. What are you doing? I asked. Finding patterns, she murmured. If this is sabotage, it'll show up somewhere. Dates, parts, signatures. I brewed coffee strong enough to strip paint while she typed. By midnight, her screen was full of color-coded data. Red lines connected the known incidents. Yellow marked other flights Vincent had worked on. Green marked maintenance tasks linked to hydraulic systems. Look here, she said, pointing to a cluster. In the 6 months before the first failure, Vincent serviced 11 planes with minor hydraulic issues. That's way above average. Could be coincidence, I said. Could be, she replied, but I don't believe in coincidences that repeat 3 times. The next morning, Becca made a call. We need a legal safety net, she said. Someone who understands aviation law. That's how we found Patricia Reeves, a former FAA attorney who now handled safety whistleblower cases. Her office smelled like dust and airplane glue, the shelves lined with model jets. Patricia listened as we laid everything out. She flipped through the pages, her eyes sharp behind thin glasses. What you have here is compelling, she said, but not conclusive. You've got correlations, not proof. Still, you're right to act cautiously. So what do we do? I asked. You have 2 options, Patricia said. 1, go public. Media attention can force the authorities' hand, but that's dangerous. If you're wrong, you could be sued for defamation. 2. Submit this to the FBI quietly as supplementary evidence to their investigation. That keeps you out of the spotlight, but you lose control of the outcome. Becca frowned. Which would you choose? Patricia smiled without humor. Both. File it officially first. Then, if nothing happens, go public later. It shows you tried to work within the system. So we did. Becca helped me draft a 15-page report. Every flight, every log, every connection, mapped out. We mailed copies to the FBI field office in Seattle, to the FAA, and the National Transportation Safety Board. Certified delivery. Then we waited. 2 weeks passed. Nothing. 3 weeks. Still silence. I started waiting for the mail like it could save me. Then my phone rang one afternoon in late October. Is this Mira Calder? A woman's voice asked. Yes. This is Special Agent Keisha Warren with the FBI. I received your report regarding the Seattle hydraulic incidents. I'd like to meet with you to discuss it further. Can you come tomorrow at 2 p.m.? My throat tightened. Yes. Bring any additional documentation you have, she said. And Ms. Calder, don't discuss this with anyone except your attorney. The line went dead. The next day, I met Becca and Patricia outside the gray stone building that housed the FBI field office. Inside, it smelled like metal and floor polish. Security guards checked our bags, scanned our IDs, and led us through a maze of sterile corridors. Agent Warren waited in a conference room with another agent, Chen. Young, clean-cut, eyes sharp as glass. Thank you for coming, Warren said. She was mid-40s, composed, but her tone carried authority that didn't need volume. Your report was impressive, thorough for civilians. So you're taking it seriously? I asked. We never stopped investigating, she said. But your data offered new connections we hadn't considered. What about Vincent Cho? Becca asked. Warren and Chen exchanged a quick look. We've been monitoring him, Warren said. Interviews, surveillance, the works. No direct evidence yet, but the pattern is compelling. So what do you need from us? Patricia asked. Your testimony, Warren replied. Everything you remember from Flight 2847. Everything Captain Rodriguez told you. We're building a comprehensive case, but these things take time. Bureaucracy moves slow. How long? I asked. Could be months, she said. Maybe longer. If you notice anything unusual, calls, visitors, let us know immediately. She slid a card across the table. My direct number. We left with a strange kind of relief. The hollow kind that comes from knowing someone else is carrying the weight, but not fast enough. Weeks turned into months. Thanksgiving came and went. I tried to go back to normal life at my aunt's, waiting tables at a local restaurant, smiling at customers who would never know I once walked away from a plane that should have exploded. Then, one night, the phone rang again. It was Rodriguez. His voice was tight. Have you heard anything from the FBI? Nothing, I said. You? Same. But I think there's been another incident. Seattle to Phoenix this time. Hydraulics again. Was Vincent working? That's the thing, Rodriguez said. He's on leave. Family emergency. Silence filled the line. So if he's not working, I whispered, then maybe we're wrong. Or maybe, Rodriguez said, someone else is helping him. The call ended, but the doubt didn't. For the first time, I wondered if we'd built a monster out of shadows, or if the real one was larger than we could see. I didn't sleep that night. The idea that we might be wrong haunted me even more than the fear that we were right. If Vincent Cho was innocent, then we had spent months stalking the ghost of a man's reputation. But if he wasn't, if he had help, then whoever was still out there might have just struck again. The next morning, my aunt found me sitting at the kitchen table surrounded by printouts and coffee cups. Sweetheart, she said gently, you've got to rest. I can't, I murmured. What if another plane goes down because we stop looking? She placed her hand on mine. You can't carry the sky on your back, Mira. I wanted to believe her, but I couldn't. 2 days later, the phone rang again. It was Agent Warren. Her voice was calm but clipped. We have a development. Can you come to Seattle today? Patricia met me there. When we walked into the same gray conference room, there were more agents than before. Warren, Chen, and 2 others I didn't recognize. Warren gestured for us to sit. 3 days ago, she began, a mechanic came forward. He witnessed Vincent Cho accessing planes outside his assigned shifts several times over the past year. Becca, who had joined via video call, leaned closer to the screen. Did he say why he didn't report it earlier? He said Vincent told him he was double-checking his work, Warren said. But after hearing about our investigation, he got nervous and decided to speak up. Patricia folded her hands. That's your witness. That's what you needed. Warren nodded. It's a start, but things got complicated. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were hospital bills and therapy intake forms. Vincent's son was diagnosed with leukemia 2 years ago. The medical costs are crushing. His attorney claims Vincent's extra hours were overtime to cover the bills, nothing more. I stared at the papers, the reality of them, the neat, itemized list of suffering. You believe that? I asked. Warren sighed. Belief isn't the issue. Proof is. The defense is painting him as a desperate father, not a saboteur. Patricia frowned. That doesn't explain the deleted footage. No, Warren agreed. But it muddies motive. The prosecution won't file charges without something solid, and there's more. She hesitated. The mechanic who came forward received a threatening text last night, anonymous number. It said, "Snitches don't fly." My breath caught. You think Vincent sent it? We're investigating, Warren said, but it suggests someone knows we're closing in. After the meeting, Patricia and I sat in her car in silence. The weight of the gray building behind us felt heavier than the sky. What happens now? I asked. We wait, she said quietly. The FBI keeps digging. Maybe they'll find more. But waiting had never felt this dangerous. The weeks blurred together. I picked up extra shifts at the restaurant, pretending normal life could wash the investigation off me. It didn't. Every time a plane passed overhead, I froze. Sometimes I thought I saw someone watching me from across the parking lot, a man in a dark jacket standing too still. Other times I'd wake up in the middle of the night, convinced my phone was vibrating with another unknown number. Then, one Thursday afternoon in April, I got the notification that would change everything. Breaking news. Airline mechanic arrested in connection with series of safety incidents. My hands started trembling. I clicked the article. Vincent Cho, 47, was in custody on charges of sabotage and reckless endangerment. The FBI claimed new evidence linked him directly to the hydraulic failures. I called Agent Warren immediately. I just saw the news, I said. What happened? What new evidence? A baggage handler came forward, Warren explained. He saw Vincent in a restricted maintenance zone late one night last year. Didn't think much of it until he recognized him from our reports. That's enough to arrest him? Combined with everything else we've gathered? Yes. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the dark window. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt hollow. That night, Rodriguez called. You saw it? He asked. I did. We did it, he said, his voice thick. All those nights, all that doubt, we were right. Maybe, I said softly, but it doesn't feel like winning. The following weeks were chaos. Reporters hounded the story. The airline released statements of cooperation and concern. Vincent's family refused to comment, and still a part of me wondered if we'd caught the right man, or simply found the most convenient one. The trial was scheduled for summer. Patricia said it would take months to prepare, but the prosecution was confident. The FBI's evidence, maintenance logs, witness statements, digital traces, was strong. Yet every time I closed my eyes, I saw that folder on the table, the medical bills, the little boy's name highlighted at the top. One evening, I sat at my aunt's kitchen counter, staring at my untouched dinner when she came in. You're thinking about him again, she said. I keep trying not to, I replied. He almost killed hundreds of people. Almost, she said gently. But he didn't, and he's human. That's the hard part, isn't it? I nodded. He's a monster and a father at the same time. I don't know which to believe. She squeezed my shoulder. Maybe both. The next morning, Becca called. I've been reading the case files, she said. You know what's strange? The timestamps on the deleted footage. They're all during the same shift rotation. If Vincent worked alone, how did he access all those feeds without being noticed? You think someone helped him? I think someone covered for him or used him. Her words stuck in my head like a splinter. I started rereading every note we'd ever taken, every cross-reference she'd built. And for the first time, I realized the pattern wasn't just about what was missing. It was about what stayed hidden in plain sight. The trial began in August under a pale, endless sky that made the courthouse look smaller than it should have. I stood outside with Patricia and Becca, staring up at the steps that led to the courtroom. You don't have to do this, Patricia said gently. I do, I answered. I lived it. Inside, the air buzzed with quiet tension. Reporters whispered, pens clicking like distant insects. Vincent Cho sat at the defense table, his hands folded neatly in front of him. He looked smaller than the man I'd imagined all these months, gray at the temples, tired, hollow. His wife sat behind him, her face pale and unreadable. 2 teenage kids flanked her, heads down. For a moment, I almost couldn't breathe. The prosecution opened with precision, building the case piece by piece. 3 incidents, 3 hydraulic failures, 3 stretches of deleted security footage. They showed maintenance logs, photographs, timelines. Agent Warren took the stand and testified about months of investigation, the witnesses who had come forward, the data analysis that revealed a pattern impossible to ignore. Then came the witnesses. Rodriguez first. He described the night of our flight, his calm, the fear beneath it, the miracle of survival. Then Dex, who looked older now, his voice trembling when he recounted the screams and the bounce on the runway. The mechanic who'd seen Vincent off shift testified next, then the baggage handler who had finally recognized him from the photo. Each story built another brick in the wall around Vincent. When my name was called, my legs felt like glass. I walked to the witness stand, raised my right hand, swore the oath. The prosecutor smiled gently, trying to steady me. Ms. Calder, you were a flight attendant on Flight 22847. Can you describe that night? I told them. Every detail. The voice on the intercom, the foam runway, the metal shriek, the little girl's blanket, the smell of fear like burnt rubber. When I finished, the courtroom was silent. In your 6 years as a flight attendant, the prosecutor asked, have you ever experienced or heard of a double hydraulic failure like that? No, I said, never. He nodded. And when you learned the incident might have been sabotage? Before I could answer, Vincent's attorney stood. Objection, irrelevant. The judge nodded, sustained. But I had already answered in my head. Betrayed, terrified, violated. Cross-examination was brutal. The defense attorney's smile never reached his eyes. Ms. Calder, he said, you left your job after this event, correct? Yes. Because you were traumatized? Because I learned someone had deliberately tampered with a plane full of people, I said, and I couldn't trust the system anymore. He arched an eyebrow. Or because fear clouded your judgment? Patricia rose. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. I exhaled slowly and looked toward the jury. 12 strangers who would decide whether the man sitting 10 feet away from me was a saboteur or a scapegoat. When I stepped down, my hands were shaking, but I'd said what needed to be said. The trial dragged on for 3 weeks. The defense claimed Vincent was being framed, that the airline was using him as a fall guy to deflect from their own safety failures. They painted him as a hard-working father crushed by debt and grief, a man who'd spent his nights double-checking his work, not destroying it. They brought in coworkers who testified to his kindness, his patience, his precision. They called the FBI's data circumstantial, but the evidence built, steady and relentless. The scratched hydraulic line, the missing footage, the overlapping maintenance logs, the witness who'd seen him where he shouldn't have been. When closing arguments ended, I sat in the gallery next to Rodriguez, both of us silent. He hadn't said much since his testimony, just stared at the floor, his thumb tapping a slow rhythm against his knee. Whatever happens, he whispered, thank you for coming this far. 4 days later, the jury returned. The foreman stood, hands trembling. Guilty, he said, on 3 counts of sabotage. Guilty on multiple counts of reckless endangerment. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Vincent didn't flinch. His wife collapsed into quiet sobs, her children holding her arms. I felt my chest tighten, not in triumph, but in something colder. Relief and sorrow mixed into something I couldn't name. Sentencing came 2 months later, 15 years in federal prison. The judge's voice was measured but heavy. Mr. Cho, he said, your actions endangered hundreds of lives. Whatever your grievances, nothing justifies the deliberate compromise of human safety. During the hearing, the truth finally surfaced, or the version of it we could live with. Vincent had confessed privately to his attorney, who shared limited details. He claimed he never meant to cause crashes. He wanted to expose what he saw as systemic negligence in airline maintenance. He believed that creating controlled failures, emergencies the planes could survive, would force accountability. He'd convinced himself he was saving lives by proving the system's flaws. He hadn't understood how close he'd come to killing hundreds. When the hearing ended, I stepped outside into the crisp November air. The courthouse steps glistened from a morning rain. Agent Warren found me there. Thank you, she said softly. Without your persistence, we might never have connected the incidents. It doesn't feel like a victory, I said. Justice rarely does, she replied, but you helped save lives. As we spoke, she added something I hadn't known. That fourth incident Rodriguez mentioned, the one that happened while Vincent was supposedly on leave, it was fake. We staged it. I blinked. You what? We wanted to see his reaction, Warren explained. If there had been a real fourth incident, it would have cleared him, but he didn't take the bait, which confirmed he was our guy. I stood there in the drizzle, trying to process everything. The years of fear, the sleepless nights, the trial, the lies. Rodriguez had been right, but victory felt like ash. That night I called him. It's over, I said. I know, he said quietly, but I can't feel it yet. Me neither. He paused. Do you ever wonder what made him cross that line? What makes a man decide to play God with an airplane? Every day, I said. When the call ended, I sat by my aunt's window, watching a plane move soundlessly through the clouds. Somewhere, passengers leaned against windows, sipping coffee, reading magazines, unaware of how fragile safety really was. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. So very tired. 8 months have passed since the trial ended, and life has started to feel like life again, or at least something close to it. I'm still living with my aunt, though I finally signed a lease on a small one-bedroom apartment by the water. It's nothing fancy, just a kitchen with a cracked tile and a view of the docks, but it's mine. I enrolled in nursing school this spring. It felt strange, trading the sky for hospitals, but I figured if I was going to help people, I wanted to do it somewhere my feet could stay on the ground. The first time I walked into class, the smell of antiseptic and coffee hit me like turbulence. My heart thudded, but it didn't break. Progress, my therapist would say. Becca still visits once a month. She never brings up the investigation anymore, and neither do I. We've said everything there is to say. Sometimes we just sit on the couch and watch movies, her laptop open, my textbook spread out beside me. It feels normal, like two sisters trying to rebuild the parts of themselves that life shook loose. Rodriguez retired last month. He called to tell me he'd bought a house in Colorado near his daughter. Can't fly anymore, he admitted. Every time I sit in the cockpit, I see that night. The runway, the foam, the screaming. I know the feeling, I told him. Dex reached out too. It was my birthday. He sent a short message. Still flying. Still alive. Refused to let fear win. I admired him for that. I wished I could be like him. But I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Then, last month, my dad needed surgery in Chicago. My brother couldn't take him. That meant I had to fly. I stared at the booking screen for hours, my fingers trembling over the mouse. My therapist said exposure was good for healing. My heart said otherwise. The night before the flight, I researched the maintenance history of the exact plane I'd be on. I checked every mechanic's name, every inspection log. I even looked up the FAA incident reports. Becca laughed when she saw my tabs open. You're being irrational, she said. I'm being alive, I answered. At the airport, I checked my bag 3 times. The gate area smelled like recycled air and coffee. Familiar, but not safe. When boarding started, I nearly turned around. My pulse thundered, and for a moment, I considered renting a car and driving 2,000 miles instead. But I didn't. I took a deep breath and stepped onto the jet bridge. The flight attendant greeting passengers looked barely 20. Nervous smile, trembling hands. I remembered what it felt like to stand there, pretending confidence while your heart raced under the uniform. I smiled at her, a real smile this time, and said, "You're doing great." She blinked in surprise and thanked me. I found my seat, buckled in, and gripped the armrests as the engine started to roar. Every muscle in my body wanted to run. The plane began to move, the ground rolling past, faster and faster. My knuckles went white. Then, lift. The wheels left the earth, and for the first time in years, I felt the weight of gravity fall away without panic. I counted silently, 100, 200, 300 seconds, and when I opened my eyes, the world below was small and harmless. The flight was smooth, uneventful, the seatbelt light turned off, and the cabin filled with the quiet hum of air conditioning and the soft rustle of magazines. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard, nothing happening. When we landed in Chicago, my eyes stung. I wasn't sure if it was relief or something deeper. My dad was waiting by baggage claim, his smile tired but warm. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said, and for once I meant it. Later that night, sitting by his hospital bed, I thought about everything: the crash landing, the investigation, the trial, the sleepless nights. People always ask if flying is safe. I tell them the truth. Statistically, yes, it's the safest way to travel. But no system is perfect. Not machines, not people, not even justice. There will always be someone like Vincent, someone broken enough to think destruction can bring meaning. But there will also be people like Rodriguez, like Becca, like the hundreds of passengers who walked away alive because others refused to give up. I've stopped being angry. Anger is heavy, and I'm finally tired of carrying it. My therapist says healing isn't about forgetting. It's about finding a way to live beside the memories without letting them own you. I think she's right. A few nights ago, I had a dream. I was back on flight 2847, but it wasn't crashing. Rodriguez was in the cockpit, calm as ever. We've got this, he said. I know, I answered. Outside the window, the runway shimmered with foam, and instead of fear, I felt peace. When I woke up, the sun was just starting to rise. My aunt was in the kitchen making coffee. You look better, she said. I feel better, I told her. Good, she smiled. You'll be late for class. I grabbed my backpack and headed out the door. The morning air smelled like salt and rain. Above me, the sky was a clear sheet of blue, streaked with white contrails that stretched toward the horizon. For a long time, I just stood there watching them, thinking about how fragile and beautiful flight really is, how every journey depends on thousands of people doing their jobs perfectly, and how one person's choices can tilt everything. Then I got in my car and drove to school. One day at a time. That's all any of us can do.